Hey everyone, David here, and I've got some exciting news to share. I've decided to write a book, and I've entitled it Psychosocial Hazards Are Real. The book is intended to help clarify the fact that psychological safety cannot be achieved without paying attention to the psychosocial hazards people are being exposed to. Despite how much individuals might be interested in treating others with kindness, dignity, and respect, many cultures are so full of psychosocial traps that no psychological health and safety effort can ultimately succeed. But to address psychosocial hazards, you first have to know what they are, and you have to have some idea what to do to address them. Though the book won't be 100% complete until the spring of 2025, I'd like to share a unique opportunity to reserve a copy during the book presale campaign. The campaign will run from September 16th to October 18th, 2024. This will be an opportunity to get one of the first copies of the book, tickets to the book launch event, and other opportunities to learn more about psychosocial hazards. For more information, you can go to my personal LinkedIn or Facebook page, or the LinkedIn, Facebook, or webpage for ID2 Solutions. Don't miss out on this unique opportunity. Now, back to this episode of the podcast. Overexertion can lead to either physical or mental strain that can show up in the workplace and in life. We'll talk about a technological approach to preventing overexertion in the manufacturing industry. Up next on this episode of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. From Flourish DX, this is the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. As workplace mental health has become a global priority, there's a greater focus on addressing psychosocial hazards. Each week, we look at psychological safety from an occupational health and safety perspective. Let's talk psychological health and safety. Welcome to this week's Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. I'm your host, Dr. I. David Daniels, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Each week, we seek to increase awareness of the importance of psychological health and safety by learning from the lived experiences, research, and expertise of our guests, as well as advocating strategies to reduce harm and minimize vulnerability to psychosocial hazards in the American workplace. So overexertion happens when you push your mind and or your body to its limits, resulting in fatigue, pain, and sometimes injury. It can be caused by physical or mental exertion, and it can occur in the workplace or in our daily lives. So physical exertion can occur when lifting heavy objects, performing repetitive motions, or maintaining awkward postures. It can also be caused by working in an environment with extreme temperature, such as hot environments or heat stress, or in cold environments that reduce your blood flow. Mental overexertion also can be known as mental exhaustion or mental fatigue. It's a state where extreme tiredness can affect your mood, your focus, and your decision-making skills. It can occur when your brain is overstimulated or maintains high activity without rest. Some of the signs of mental overexertion include difficulty paying attention or focusing, lack of energy, decreased productivity, memory difficulties, irritability, or anger. So we're going to talk about overexertion. We're going to talk about it in the context of one of our pretty important industries, and that's manufacturing. And I've got someone actually that I'm meeting for the first time. That happens on the podcast every now and then. They get a chance to meet somebody for the first time and find out more about something that I found a little bit curious. So let's get started by an introduction of my guest, by my guest, with this question. So who is Rich Walsh?
Well, thank you, Dr. Daniels, for taking the time. And I really appreciate and likewise advocate for the population that you're looking after and stimulating conversation about. My name is Rich Walsh. I reside in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been in healthcare information technology for about 25 years. Along those journeys, I've been in front of very emergent trends. So I do remember selling electronic medical record software as early as 2000 when we were all on paper charts. I moved to the next big trend, which was around interoperability, taking data and making it interoperable. The next big trend was really around population health management, looking at and predicting on risk and getting to those chronic disease or folks that are in need, maybe comorbidities. So when you have electronic medical records and interoperability and population health management, you've got a very opportunistic, time to mine data and look through data. So recently, I would say in the last 4 or 5 years, I've transitioned to be working for a company. The company is now called AMP Health. We originated in Olympic athlete management, where you had the athletic trainers and the physiotherapists and the sports condition and psychology doctors working with the athlete. They were doing it in a very antiquated way. And we went in there and kind of digitized, automated, standardized, and made that a more of a kumbaya moment of interoperability and connectivity, thus helping out on the performance outcomes. One of the athletes fell to a severe hip injury and ended up in a world renowned sports medicine clinic. The doctor was looking at this individual who was on our technology platform and said, "Well, what are you doing on your iPhone?" And this Olympic athlete said, "Well, this is how I stay connected. I'm now actually loading in the physical therapy recommendations for my recovery so that my whole team can holistically be around my well being." So we went from Olympic athlete management to orthopedic sports medicine surgical recovery to then finding out about some work with tactical athletes, first responders, fire and police, as well as the Air Force. Ended up getting a contract with the Air Force who was talking about readiness and injury prevention. And we were kind of looking through that lens, and we found out about Jeff Bezos and talking about his warehouse and his number one medical expenditure was musculoskeletal disorders. So we kind of said, look, we've got technology that engages, standardizes, cares for, starts to predict. And why do we not move into this very important population? So here I am today as Vice President of Business Development with a really neat company that we deliver technology infrastructure to either two channels. A channel might be injury prevention providers that have a contract with a manufacturer. And recently, we've been hearing kind of employers knock on our door and say, "We hear you have something special in and around working with physical labor management and reducing injuries, providing some connectivity, some education. Can you help us with our industrial laborers? A lot of them are under overexertion." So here we are.
Here we are. Here we are. Well, I'm looking forward to digging into some of those details over the next few moments. Um, a question I ask everyone when they come on is, what does psychological health and safety mean to you?
We look at it first through our lens is more of the physical side. We provide technology that can go in and do an assessment to see physically where an industrial laborer is according to mobility and resilience. So we can identify kind of physically and be more predictive and more proactive and more preventative. But we realize from our history in working with high performing athletes that it's not all physical. It's emotional. It's psychological, like you said. It's spiritual. It's a sense of purpose and belonging. And so it kind of, for me, Dr. Daniels, means balance. That there's a balance between who I am performing as a physical laborer and who I am in a context of my peer group, as well as my lifestyle outside of my job. Is everything kind of centered and feeling good and feeling strong? Am I resilient across all of those metrics? So we like to say, hey, we can physically give you some prediction, but how are you going to manage that mental resilience of that labor and that workforce? A lot of that is applied on the C-suite and their investment and how they want to treat their men and women, so to say. So our hopes are that they can galvanize around. I've got a physical um, uh, uh, industrial laborer and I've got a baseline, but how do I also get a mental, a psychological baseline? Through our technology, you can survey a mental resilience, whatever, but it's an interesting subject and somewhat of a touchy subject. A lot of it has to do with messaging.
Yes, yes, yeah. I had a guest on a while back who did the analogy, and this guest comes from a technology background and suggested that. So why is it that we don't look at humans the same way we look at a computer? The computer has both hardware and software, and they both have to work. You can't simply sit a like an old tower up with a keyboard and a mouse and a screen and have no software and wonder why it doesn't work. But it's also important that the software be updated for it. So you can't take Windows 93 or and put it on a current computer, nor can you take a current computer and put when you can't you just they don't mix and match either. And so sometimes that's the issue is that we have current conditions in terms of the physical environment, but we have kind of old ideas about how that thing is supposed to be done. There are still people out there who think that there's like no pain, no gain, and that if you're just not big and strong enough to drag that thing around, then there's something wrong with you. And people buy into that sometimes, and they go out and they get themselves injured trying to be something that they're not. Particularly people who for which the work really wasn't designed anyway. It was designed for a bunch of big burly people, and you've got small frame people who can't necessarily do it that same way. So it's this separation, this thing we've tried to do by separating the mind and the body. It doesn't work out all that well ultimately. So and kind of along those lines, and you got into it a little bit, but I'd like you to talk about what are your thoughts around why either organizations or people engage in overexertion anyway. So why do we do that?
Well, I think again, if we kind of hone in on the physical labor population, and I think you kind of even coined it kind of burly. We have this historical view of big burly person, they just grind and they can get through it, and after they get through it, life at home is just the same. I mean, they're not fatigued. It's just like, but when I look at my desk job, I know I have to get physical activity because I've been complacent most of the day. But I think the environment is highly repetitive. So there's a lot of overuse. We've got some big body parts. We've got neck, we've got shoulders, we've got back, we've got knees, we've got ankles. There's just lots of wear and tear in these facilities, these plants, and we're treating it in a reactive, latent way. And we'd like to see people get more proactive, predictive around this whole topic. And I think that's what we're doing as a company. Let me elaborate if I didn't kind of I think that what we're seeing is number one, there's a premium for a fit, conditioned, mentally resilient laborer. It's just they're tough, and the cost associated with hiring, rehiring somebody that quits, the cost associated with a first year injury, which is highly likely because they're coming in not used to this repetitive lifestyle or this overexertion lifestyle. So it's got to be a commitment from the top that says we value this employee base. We need to stay engaged. There are stakeholders, you HR, you health and safety, you CFO, you EH&S, you ergonomist, you engineer. Every one of you is important to the physical well-being. And by the way, physicality and fatigue, like Dr. Daniels, you say, can wear on the mind. And that next day on Wednesday, if you don't perhaps engage them and talk about the importance of hydration or stretching or flexing or a mental minute, if you don't engage there, they're just going to continue to burn. So we need people, process, technology, and data to really drive these things to a really good outcome.
Right, right. Yeah, I recently I think the estimate is that turnover in American businesses on an annual basis cost $1 trillion, trillion with a T. And that turnover is for all kinds of reasons, but a lot of that turnover is situations where people are, there's not a match between the work and the human that is expected to do the work. And that lack of match is not that they weren't originally a match because somebody hired them. I find this interesting that organizations will hire what they believe to be a great candidate for a job, whatever the job might be, on Monday. And somehow, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, a few months down the road, that person is no longer the best candidate. What happened? And I'd suggest in most cases, it wasn't the person. It was the system that the person was put into. It was the environment that the person was placed into, because if they weren't a good fit, why did you hire them in the first place? Because that really says more about you than it does about them. They showed up and presented themselves to do a job. Here, I can do this, I can do that. And often what happens is I'm given work that I'm really not good at, or I'm given too much work that I'm actually good at. And both of those are problems. Both of those are, and a lot of that starts in my head. There's certain things that I know and there's certain things that I don't. And that area of unconscious incompetence, that's on the organization. People don't know what they don't know, but you should.
Well, I think you're driving into an area that I think is very important to us. It's called job placement. It's called job matching, job demand analysis. So if Dr. Daniels is hired, we probably should going through an initial audit of, this is where you're going to be located. This is the amount of reps that you're going to have. We've done a functional movement evaluation on you. We see some lower left knee impairment. Remember, you old football player running the field and you got torn up ACL? Hey, we picked that up in our functional movement evaluation through computer vision technology. So we have a likelihood that, if you don't kind of strengthen or stretch and continue to pour into that lower left extremity, there could be cause for some pain, and we want you going into work fit, and we want you going home with those kids fit, and we want you to have your weekend pickle game. It's fair, right? So I think that our technology is able to do assessments, and where we're getting involved in right now as we speak is ergonomic job demand. So if you take the functional movement evaluation data and you overlay it with the job demand, we're going to get a good fit for Dr. Daniels. He's perfect for this job in our facility. So technology is getting advanced. We're getting more predictive. We're getting more preventative. We're getting more proactive.
Right, right. And again, I'm perfect for this job the way the job is and the way the environment is today. Because again, I tend not to be very balanced in terms of assigning a responsibility for workplace safety. I'm just not. The Occupational Safety and Health Act puts most of the responsibility on the employer. And there's a reason for that. You decided to do the work, whatever the work is. You decided how the work was going to be designed and how many people were going to be there and what the temperature was going to be and what the perform. You decided all of that. And you also have more control over it. So again, they're fit, they're ready to do the job today. But when you wake up in the middle of the night and decide we're going to come up with a new product or change things and don't look at the data, you only look at the data, oh, there's opportunity in the market, but am I prepared to take advantage of that opportunity with the resources that I have? And a lot of those are human beings. So you end up, kind of, because I think organizations often don't put enough attention into research and development. They just dive off and do something because it seemed like a good idea. And then you end up really sacrificing whatever made that organization successful in the beginning. Because you got this, again, new ideas are great. I love them. But implementing new ideas, it takes data. The data has to become information. That information has to become knowledge, and ultimately, that knowledge has to become wisdom. Before you just jump off, and again, it seemed like a good idea, but the 10 people that we hired were not hired to do this new thing. So now that's going to require either retraining on their part, switching out some of their gear. They do it if we told them. If we support them, they'll certainly do it. But what they can't do is simply get this new thing dropped in their lap. Again, we thought it up last night. We walk on the floor. We're going to do things different today. People are looking and going like, And that's how folks end up, getting themselves injured and sometimes getting themselves killed.
Well, you brought up data, which I think is, so critical. And what we've designed is an intake technology that can intake functional movement evaluation data of an individual. It can take in incidents, it can take in proactive engagements, wellness visits. It can take in all this data, and then we can mine it and display it so we can see the amount of incidents, where the incidents are happening, because an active participant that is proactively on a manufacturing environment and floor that's looking at Dr. Daniels kind of hold his back a little bit and stretch. Hey, come over here. Tell me what's going on, how long it's been going on, what job location, what department. We're intaking all that data. So as the data comes in, it is elegantly displayed in real time so we can say, what is going on in the back part of the facility with low back pain? Because we're out there and we're seeing some incidents. They haven't fallen into an OSHA recordable event yet because we're an engaged leadership team. We're out there talking. They know us. Hey, let me put your hand on the back of Dr. Daniels and say, what's going on? It sounds like you're like stretching. Yeah, you know what? If we incorporate all this data, we can mine it and look for trends so that we can say, got a problem. We've seen 16 early incidents in the back facility, and they're all pointing to upper right and back and neck. Something ergonomically's got to change, to prevent something. So it's fascinating what we're doing with data.
Yes, yes. And if you think about that example that you just gave, if we've had 16 of these very similar kinds of ergonomic related, minor injuries at the moment, do we want to try to change the 16 people or simply change the process? It'd be easier to change the process such that it doesn't require you to do that thing that's causing the shoulder injury. We simply do it a slightly different way, and come to find out, you can either eliminate or significantly reduce. Now, there may be one of those folks or two of them who have some other underlying issue, but it's not 16 of them. I mean, that's telling us, and again, something that the W. Edwards Deming, the father of the total quality management concept, said that if you look at a system and it's not producing what you expect, 95% of the issue is the system itself. Only 5% is the people. And often, again, this is my observation that folks will get the data and they'll immediately go back to the person and go, well, what's wrong with you? There isn't anything wrong with me. My body is reacting to this environment. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It is causing me pain because it's not supposed to work like that. And that gives us the opportunity, before that pain becomes an injury, before that pain becomes something really significant. That's, again, just if we listen to these, the human body is just an elegant thing if we listen to it. And not, again, it's to this point about and not push it past its limits for some unknown reason. So that was actually the question I was going to ask, is how you're, doing some of this differently. So are there studies, research to kind of back up what it is so when you go into to talk to folks about what Amp Health does, what types of, case studies, research, whatnot, do you use to back up the approach that you all have taken?
So I think there's been a lot of great evidence and data on overexertion. I think Travelers just came out there with their 2024 report that said 34% of new hires, or 34% of the industrial labor population succumbs to, an injury, a musculoskeletal injury. So there's already evidence. Then there's another kind of resynthesis of that says the new hire is at a higher rate of injury. So we see all the data. We're just bringing the infrastructure and the technology for that setting to be predictive, proactive, and preventative. As we come to market with this V1 product, we are going to be absolutely grabbing and de-identifying data and looking at use cases and looking at opportunities, to tell the story. And that's getting really exciting because at the end of the day, we're a business intelligence solution. And so that data output should be all storyboarded. So we're going to have some nice ROI, and some nice opportunities to share. So thank you for asking that question, because I think the first question is, hey, what kind of ROI can I expect? And quite frankly, what we like to do is go, hey, let's dig into that right now and see what kind of baseline we're working with. And from a baseline, tell us about your recordable events last year. Tell us about how many new hires that you typically have in a year. Tell us about how many people come in and quit. So we get some baselines, and then within, if it's a manufacturing facility within 300 people, we can do a functional movement evaluation over 300 laborers, and we can risk identify right there that bottom third population, we need to get to them. So, but I think the evidence is going to be built on the programs that we institutionalize through this technology. So it's super exciting. And the other efficiencies are a lot of the people that are using software technology are using various point solutions, which can be very cumbersome, antiquated, costly, and non-interoperable. So what we want is one seamless end-to-end comprehensive solution that holds the integrity of the data.
Do you need more psych health and safety in your life? Then head over to the Flourish DX Academy for several free on-demand e-learning courses. If you're an internal professional, follow Flourish DX on Eventbrite to register for any of our free fortnightly interactive webinars. Our flagship professional practice program is also exclusively available for internal professionals. The 12-week course blends theory, applied practice, and interaction with other professionals through live lectures and a monthly community of practice session. Find out more about all these learning opportunities or inquire about a bespoke in-house training at the Flourish DX Academy. www.45003.org. Now back to this episode.
I spent most of my adult working life anyway in the public sector as opposed to private. I was only in the private sector a couple of times. And so I tend to have a slightly different mindset than some do, because I think sometimes people ask the ROI question when they really don't really know how they made the money they made right now. They just know they had a profit. They don't have enough depth of data. For example, we have a profit margin of X, but what's baked into there is that we're going to lose. We've got 40% turnover. So what would happen if you could cut that turnover down, if you cut it in half? What would happen? And so when safety folks, when risk management folks come into these organizations, and that's, in essence, that's another, I don't know if you all look at yourself that way, but anytime you can predict harm to people, it's a risk management exercise. That's what
Loss
it is.
containment, loss control, risk management.
Absolutely. And again, it's not just about the bottom line. It's about maybe a slightly different bottom line, because your current bottom line has baked in things that really don't need to be there. They don't. No, they don't. I mean, they don't need, but you don't have visibility to it, so you can't do anything about it. No one's really, kind of connected the dots to show, again, in manufacturing. Again, I may not have this totally committed to memory, but it seems to me that the manufacturing has 40 in the 40th percentile of turnover. That's really high. I mean, so you're constantly turning over people, constantly bringing in new people, and you bring in new people. And again, I've seen very similar data that suggests your chances of getting injured in your first year are 3 times higher than they are past your 5th year. People get hurt early because they don't know. They get hurt late because they can't. They can't do it the way they used to. They think they can, but they physically. So we have to be able to adapt on both ends. People who are new need more information about what's expected and what the hazards and the risks actually are, because I physically can do it, but I don't know the hazard. So I might overdo it because I'm big and strong. I used to be 22 as well. We all were at one time. But now I'm 42 or 52 or 62.
Well, Dr. Daniels, the one thing that is tough but opportunistic is that let's just say you and I were teamed up on a cost containment, loss control, risk mitigation firm, and you and I go knock on downtown Coca-Cola, big, firm, or UPS, or Home Depot, all of our big Atlanta, fortunes. And we got in touch with someone and just said, look, let's just take two facilities and two plants and let's look at cost containment, risk control. Let's just play and put it on the whiteboard. We could immediately go in there and say the first thing that we would like to do, Dr. Daniels and I, is we would like to get some data on last year's musculoskeletal recordable events. Can we see that? They should be able to produce that. We should say they're already been injured in a recordable event. We should go see if they're still fit and conditioned. Let's do that. And then, if you don't mind, can you tell us about your new hire program? Because if we look at the evidence behind the new hire program, there's going to be a certain percentage, high percentage, that gets hurt in that first 6 months. Why don't we institutionalize a fitness program, a stretch, and but let's do it even better. Let's individually look at them through some technology because it needs to be more personalized. And through a functional movement evaluation, we can personalize that because Dr. Daniels has got great upper body, but lower body. So let's do that. And then, by the way, wouldn't it be appropriate for us to kind of look at the 55 and up population and kind of maybe risk stratify that population? Because and maybe it's even look at it even narrower and say 55 and above that have been in the facility for over 36, 48 months, because they probably have a higher propensity because of the wear and tear, overexertion. We could go in there so quickly and do some really great cost containment and risk mitigation. And then we could sit back and we could look at an analysis of their systems and start to look at their systems and going, the efficiency or the inefficiency of your systems, the way you're documenting, or the way you're creating reports, very labor intensive. You're using Power BI and Tableau over here. I'm like, one very comprehensive solution that is woven into the fabric of this could basically be on demand, turning these business intelligence reviews. There's so much opportunity for cost containment and mitigation. It's thoroughly exciting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you make me, again, as I said, most of my experience is public sector. And I'll tell you, I went to work for a local government that you might even know where they are, but I won't call their name because, but anyway, in the four previous fiscal years before I got there, they were spending, based on an audit, $12 million a year in new workers' comp claims. 12 million. And nobody really knew why. It seemed high, and I go, yeah, that's pretty high. And one person, with no staff, as a matter of fact, was able to save him $4 million in the first year. And that savings was based on pretty easy things for me, but just things they didn't know that they should be doing. They weren't complicated. And you mentioned one of them. It was perhaps we should have a basic safety orientation for new employees and not simply hire them off the street and send them to their work site, because that's what they were doing. These people, again, I hire good people. They have skills, but they don't know the hazard environment that you're placing them in. I can do the work. I can dig the ditch. I can write the thing. I can walk up this. I can do that, but I don't know the environment. That's what the orientation does, is it aligns them with the environment you're now going to place them in and helps them kind of connect with that and know that, oh, this, the temperature's high or low here, or there's traffic over there, or these steps will get slippery if you spill something. And there's all these small details that people just don't know. And if that's already baked into the system and nobody's paid attention to it, just go, wow, that seems like a lot of money, but we kind of keep operating anyway. And so again, this focus around business intelligence and collecting this data, again, I can argue that in many cases, the first year may not cost you anything because it may not. There's a lot of situations, and it's not because you're a bad company. It's not because you don't care. It's because you don't have the data. You don't have it at your disposal, so you don't really know how to fix this thing. You know there's a problem. You just don't know how to fix it because you have no data on it.
I think there's you're spot on, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of story. There's an individual that is a athletic trainer, wellness coach. He is in the public school system at one of the largest public school systems in the country, and has a passion for employee well-being and resiliency. And he didn't necessarily know how powerful the tools are today to extrapolate the data. And when I started talking about, just a computer vision motion capture functional movement screen of an individual, he was like, okay, so tell me. I'm like, yeah. I said, tell me about your audience. He goes, well, I know my bus drivers and my cafeteria workers, they're banged up, they're dinged up. One's kind of sedentary in lifestyle and getting in and out, and he's like, and I said, can you get me some historical data on? He's like, I think, and we'll go find out from your workers' claims compensation and your OSHA recordables. But when I showed him this technology and this early predictive data, his enthusiasm level just shot through the roof. He's like, I would love to do a wellness proactive engagement with my cafeteria workers and saying, I can do a functional movement evaluation of you and tell you where you need to do some stretching and some strengthening. And I can do it in 3 minutes, and then I can personalize that and print something out or send it to their mobile device. But it's data. But I think they're not aware of how powerful the tools are to get early data.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, and you kind of lead me to another question. So you'll often in organizations you'll find a champion, whether that be the safety director, the HR director, somebody in finance, some supervisor, some superintendent, or what have you. They go to a conference or they see a webinar or listen to a podcast and they get all excited and they go back and go, wow, this will really work. This will be good for us. So what are the types of conversations that you have with workers, frontline people? Because some of them, I've been doing it this way for the last X number of years. And yeah, I know I got that knee that hurts me a little bit, or that, my back's a little sore sometimes, but I've just kind of gotten used to it. Now, what are the kinds of conversations that can be had with those folks who I'm not even all that tech savvy, but I've been doing it this way for a while, and I don't know about that technology stuff. And some of those folks are not necessarily old either. That could be 20, 30 somethings, not necessarily older people. So what kind of conversations do you have with them?
I have this thirst when I'm out and about, just in my daily life. For example, going out to get contact saline solution at a very large, very well known, retail. And think about whether it's grocery or retail, it's big. And I walk down the aisle and I notice that there's an individual working for that company stocking shelves. And I just always say, hey, are you taking good care of that back? And I'm kind of doing it authentically, but I'm also kind of gauging, and oh, let me tell you, she's like, at the end of the day, and I'm like, does the company do anything for you? Or are you doing any? I said, you got to get those stretches in and strengthen. And she's like, thank you so much for caring. She's like, not really. And it upsets me, but it also tells me there's so much opportunity for employee engagement. So I think there are our frontline laborers that thirst for investment, and then there are frontline laborers like, don't mess with my body. I mean, don't. But I think the majority in the physical environment want advocacy, they want investment, and they could certainly use some education. And if somebody basically was roving the facility and said, Dr. Daniels, you're going to be doing a lot of lifting and stacking today. So your upper back needs to be stretched and strengthened. And I also want to let you know that midweek, on a 5-day shift, you're going to probably feel a little bit of burn. So maybe some more extra tension on Tuesday night sleep, Wednesday morning hydration. Just think about that. I don't want to direct your life, but I think they'd be like, wow, these people are vested in me. So I think the employees are willing, able. I think that if you ask them to opt in for some information that could be sent to their mobile devices in their little personal Dropbox, and they could say, my upper back stretching exercises, or how much hydration should I be having? Just lifestyle medicine content. I think it's viable. The other thing that I would give you a little anecdote about is I talked to somebody that is working with potentially a union, and the union has a idea around a physical labor apprenticeship program first year. So if I'm making $24, an hour here, and I'd like to get to $28 an hour, I could enroll in this apprenticeship and perform with that well-being coach for a year and hit the toolbox every 12 month. Check the box, I've done that. Do my functional movement screen, do my exercises, show some more capability and functional. Then I could hit and achieve that next level of pay. So there's so many different creative ways, that we've got to lead. But again, we're just technologists, so we don't get into those trenches.
Well, I really like what you were sharing about, and so I guess I'm not alone that particularly when I go into service types of environments, I tend to ask about, so how you feeling? I mean, how do you feel about working here? And have made it clear that places that I get a sense that the company or the organization isn't doing anything, doesn't seem to care, I probably won't be back. And again, my dollars probably won't put you out of business, but I think if we all thought about it in that way, we were, in I would say probably the fall of 2020 and into 21, there's all these frontline workers that we all got so interested in all of a sudden. And, folks were standing out on balconies clapping for, folks that they had prior not thought a whole lot about. And as we've quote unquote gotten back to normal, I think we've kind of forgotten about these are still the same people, the people who make sure that we have, food in our grocery stores and make sure that we,
Supply chain. They are
yeah,
supply.
absolutely. The supply chain is full of human beings. And when that human being can't do their part, I can't get my part done. And I really should be concerned about that. And it only takes a couple of moments to say, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? I may not have, a bucket load of money to give them, but sometimes it's not the money. It's someone cares about me. Someone was looking out for me. Somebody thought enough to even ask me how I was doing. And that thing could encourage me to pay more attention. Oh, I really didn't know that. I appreciate that. Just that caring for each other as human beings. It's just a wonderful idea.
It's if Rich is having a great experience at this manufacturing facility, feels invested in, my productivity level is up. My desire to recruit other people to our firm is up. It is a cyclical effect, and so and I think we have a big issue in that the continental United States, from a perspective of health and well-being, we're not a very terribly healthy country. Our outcomes are abysmal. We're not in a preventative, predictive. It doesn't look good unless you invest in this human supply chain. It's just going to be headaches.
Yes, yes. And I go as far to say that there are some organizations who are actually producing fairly well, but the cost to the human beings in the system, the physical injuries that they have, the emotional stress that they have, the overwork, the long weekends and whatnot that they have, is it really worth it? Because again, ultimately that person is going to burn out, that person is going to get injured. You've got the data to be able to show it. It's coming. It's coming. And when that happens, again, that cost is kind of baked into everything that you do. That's why you had to take your prices up. That's why because the resources that you currently have, again, it's not that it's horrible. It could just be so much better if there was a focus on the human beings that you've brought into this organization to do whatever it is that you're expecting them to do, and particularly the ones that have been there for a while. And for a while might be 6 months, it might be in a few years. You've invested whatever it is in this person over the last 6 months, 2, 3 years, 10 years, whatever. Can you really afford to lose them? And how much is it going to cost you to replace them? People who retire aren't a loss. You should have, I'm thinking, organizations should be thinking, oh yeah, Joe's going to be here as a matter of fact, I used to do a survey when back in the days when I was a fire chief. We'd ask people every year, are you definitely going to retire in the next 5 years? You're sure about it. Are you definitely going to retire in the next 3? Are you definitely going to retire in the next 1? We don't need your names. We just need to get a sense because that's the only way we can gather the data. But if there's other information, you can find out that people aren't going to stay past a particular period of time just because of the work itself. We're not going to be able to keep people past, and you can do better planning in terms of we need to get somebody ready because we're probably going to lose those 4 or 5 people over there. Statistically, they're only going to be around for another 2 or 3 years. And then you can always have this system of bringing up the next person, making sure you're getting them ready. Again, more of this predictive analytics, predictive approaches, rather than wait, oh my God, they've all left now we're stuck.
Yeah, everything's predictive, everything's analytical, everything's machine learning. I mean, I don't want to beat the AI machine learning drum, but you got to be a data driven business, and if you're a data driven business, you've got to apply these algorithms and these availabilities to churn data and be predictive on data. You hit the firefighter. What an important individual to ensure is in optimum premium performance. And it is a disservice not to figure out what that individual has as a vulnerability in some type of musculoskeletal makeup. They're jumping out of buildings that are on fire. I mean, there's no other person that we need to make sure from a public, health safety. These firefighters are kind of, we've seen some people pick up our system and start kind of looking again, holistically, psychologically at that. But yeah, you're hitting on some big themes. I think the big themes are automation, data, investment, and I hate to say this, and I know we're running short on time, but the whole well-being program. There's a lot of money being thrown at the well-being program, but don't throw money at something that you haven't already had data intelligence on. And so people wonder why, well, our well-being program didn't really work out. Well, is it because you gave Dr. Daniels, who's been 4 years at the manufacturing facility, like overhead stretches when his lower back's the one that's the problem? I mean, yeah, he's well-being program's not going to be good. So let's make sure that if we're applying money, we have data to understand we're applying that effort.
Yes, yes, yeah. So a lot of the well-being craze, at least in my view, is extremely reactive. It is the person's stressed and a lot of it's more emotional stuff that we haven't even checked the physical part. They're kind of stressed, so we give them a stretching video and a $5 card so they can go get some yogurt and strawberries or whatever it is. But it's all reactive. It's after I'm stressed. It's after I'm injured, as opposed to. So every risk is the product of vulnerability to some existing hazard. They're all connected. And it's how do we work our way back to find out, so what's the hazard on the front end? And then starting from the hazard, now how are people exposed? How frequent are they? How frequently? How severe? And what's the duration of their exposure to the hazard? And then we can start determining on how we manage risk, but manage it from the proactive side as opposed to the reactive side. And again, as much as I love, grabbing, recordables and all that type of thing, these are people who already got hurt. They already cost you money. That's my, kind of different take on, even as a safety professional. After you get hurt, I can't really help you. I'm not a doctor. I can help you before. I can help you, again, identify a hazard, tell you a little bit about the exposure, some of the things you can do to minimize the risk of being exposed to that. But after you're hurt, it's time to probably get a doctor. As a matter of fact, I just had a guest who's an orthopedic surgeon. So you might need his help, but I can't help you at that point. We need folks, like yourself on the front end. That's the part as we wrap up that's so exciting about what you're doing. It is the predictive nature of this work. That's it. We could save so much pain and heartache and money and and downtime and challenges if we simply looked at the beginning of the thing rather than at the end of the thing.
I'll give you the workflow to summarize this platform. I'm the athletic trainer. I'm in a manufacturing facility. I'm hired, and Dr. Daniels is our new hire. I come in and I ask him. I said, "Hey, you're going to be engaged in physical labor and activity. It can be a grind. I mean, it is what it is, but we want to protect your best interest. I'd love to do a simple functional movement evaluation, get a baseline on where you are. I'm really invested in your well-being. And by the way, how would you like for me to disseminate information? Diet, sleep, nutrition, hydration, fatigue management, mental resilience, everything that really relates around physical labor. I want you to have that. And I'd love to reevaluate, and I'd love to be out and about. So when you have some type of ache or pain, come to me and let's get on top of it very quickly. That's the kind of, and then we want to roll up all that data so that I can take that to the CFO and go, look at the engagements, look at the benchmarks of performance, look at the incident reductions. And by the way, Dr. Daniels is one of our happiest employees because he comes by and says, thanks for caring about me. Appreciate you, Rich. This has been a great week. It's that simple, So fun times, opportunistic times, and let's make sure that we invest in the right tools, technologies, and let's show importance of that frontline labor.
Yeah, absolutely. Rich, I could go on talking about this because it's so exciting, but so anything more you want to add, including how can people get more information about AMP Health and the work that you all are doing?
I think the old traditional ways, www.amphealth.com. We love to talk. We love to consult. We love to engage. We love to learn. We're on a journey with our partnerships. They're fantastic. There's lots of opportunity to adopt our technology in a modular capacity, but we're out there again in that preventative, proactive, predictive way for these frontline laborers. So love to talk to anyone at any time.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much.
Thank you,
again,
Dr.
just a really exciting conversation, and I think we might end up having a couple others. So
let's do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
So
and thank you for the service that you're doing for the industry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. So if you're watching or listening to this podcast for the first time, welcome. I hope that something that you've heard will bring you back in the future. Previous episodes of the podcast can be found at psychhealthandsafetyusa.com. You can watch, like, subscribe, and share the podcast on the Flourish DX YouTube page. And please do join the Psych Health and Safety USA movement by connecting and becoming a subscriber on LinkedIn. So until next time, stay tuned and look out for the next episode of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. Tune in each week for new episodes of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. If you have a story or know of one that needs to be told, reach out to us on LinkedIn or send an email to david@id2-solutions.com or go to the Flourish DX website at flourishdx.com. We'll see you next time.